This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
Hey, Matt and Rose.
Hey, Kathy.
Hey, Kathy.
Now, you two know how much I love me some art history.
Mm-hmm.
And I love working with the art museums here at Harvard, and I just can't get enough, right? So, have you heard of this podcast from the Metropolitan Museum of Art called Immaterial, 5,000 Years of Art, One Material at a Time?
Yes, it's fantastic.
Ooh,
love it.
Really? Okay, well, I'm telling you nothing you don't know already. But everyone listening, please, this podcast examines the materials of art and what they can reveal about both history and humanity. Each episode, you're going to take a deep dive into different materials like stone, blankets, quilts, clay, and even concrete. What did you guys pick up on?
Yeah, there's like linen, all kinds of stuff, clay, anything. It just takes me back to that museum. It's amazing.
Right. It's like really being there. Mm-hmm.
We had to listen to one of the ones that wasn't clay. So we were diving into linen while we were hanging out the other day. And my favorite quote from that was, "No material is neutral." And I just love that. That was so classic because the linen episode, they were talking about Egypt and Giorgio Armani and high fashion and low fashion.
And how it like wears on the person and like how it flows. It's such a good episode.
Loved it.
Yeah, I'm hoping personally that listening to this is going to class us up a little bit.
We could use
it. But I mean, truly, it is like pulling the curtain back on great works of art and getting a whole new perspective from, conservators and curators, scientists, scholars, and artists.
It's a great listen. As a huge podcast fan, which brought us to making this show, it is a top-notch podcast. I recommend it for everybody.
So if you'd like to hear episodes, search for Immaterial in your favorite podcast app. That's Immaterial, 5,000 Years of Art, one material at a time.
Now go listen.
Hello, my name is Kathy King, and welcome to the For Flux Sake podcast. I'm coming to you from the Harvard Ceramics program in our fair city, Allston, Massachusetts. I'm here with Rose and Matt Katz of the world-famous Ceramic Materials Workshop, and they are ready to answer your burning questions about clay and glaze.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Fluxed Up, our newest segment here at For Flux Sake, where we talk with makers about what they do and how they suffer. Because if one thing is true in ceramics, no matter how good you are, no matter how much experience you have, we've all fluxed something up in the studio.
Hallelujah.
Yes,
Amen.
That's what we want to talk about. That's the reality of being a maker. Of no matter how much great, perfect advice we can have, we're all dealing with the practical realities of the studio, and sort of we've all done terrible things. So it's time to open up our closets.
No,
of shame.
maybe you. Maybe you. I'm perfect.
I'm free to take up all the blame.
Yes.
But we're here. We're here with our normal crew. Of course, the lovely and talented Rose. How you doing, Rose?
I'm okay.
Just okay. And switching chairs, trying something different. We've got the amazing Kathy King here.
Woohoo! Hello.
Hey, Kathy. But we're not alone. It's not just the three of us, because this is really about other people and sort of their studio suffering.
Oh, good. I'm glad it's not about us.
We're hiding our shame. We're getting other people to expose theirs.
Sure, let the dirty laundry out.
So here today, we've got Nick Sevigney, who is a wonderful maker, happens to be a friend of all three of us. And so we are thrilled to have you here today, Nick. How you doing?
I am so excited to be here with, I think if I ever give professional advice to people, it's like, make sure you do things with only the people that you really have fun with. And I can definitely say that with this crew. So.
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
What
this
a
is
sweetie
fun.
pie. Yeah, we have a good time. So Nick is a great ceramicist, been in it in a while, teaches up here in the wilderness of New Hampshire. But why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your process, what you're making? Give us a little background.
I'm actually working on my ceramic school video. So I've been like saying these things over and over again for the last like 48 hours.
Oh my gosh, so many takes.
I know, right? It's like, hello. I mean, I have so many great takes of me like, and then shit.
Oh, I know.
Like,
yeah.
start over
Sounds
again.
just like the studio.
It is totally right. So yes, my name is Nick Sevigney. I have been teaching ceramics since 1996. I will let our viewers or listeners figure out the math on that one.
This is when a student says, I was born in 1990.
Well, that's the thing, right, Kathy? Now I've got students who are like, that's my grandma's age. And you're just kind of like, oh, okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
What did you want for a grade in this class? So yeah, I kind of late 90s was going through my master's degree. I got my BFA from the Hartford Art School in 1992 or 3. And then my master's of fine arts from Southern Illinois University at Carbondale back in 1996.
So that's how you say that.
That's how you say it. That's how you fancy that word up.
That's classed up. That is a classy
that is, right?
Illinois.
And, had a great experience there. One of the things I always kind of like to acknowledge is I had not just the luck, but the privilege of walking out of graduate and undergraduate school with absolutely no student debt. Which
wow.
I'm right.
That's
like,
amazing.
Imagine that. In fact, when I got my MFA, I always like to say I walked out of graduate school with a convertible 1969 Cadillac Coupe de Ville convertible and a really nice leather jacket.
Nice.
And that's just from being out there and having the ability to, kind of immerse myself in my work, in my MFA experience. And then I did some adjunct work right out of graduate school in Rhode Island and continued teaching and got a full-time position. And then back in 2008, I came up here to Plymouth State University, where I run the ceramics program and now the ceramics and multimedia program. So lots and lots of experience. I think similar to Kathy, having, the experience running kind of a group studio and also trying to maintain a studio practice. While at the same time trying to keep up, personal relationships as well. So
you just let that slide.
Yes, I know. Who needs those things?
Partners, what?
I've done a residency with Nick at Watershed Center for Crafts in Maine, and the highlight, and every time Nick's name comes up, I share the fact that Nick can do the accent of every area of New England, starting with the tip of Maine, going through New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, and end up in Rhode Island. We don't have time for that, probably.
No, and I wouldn't know. That's, again, a whole, I could actually go all the way down to New Jersey if I wanted to,
I have a question. What did they add when you said ceramics and multimedia now? I know, like, when I read, there are so many departments, like smushing things together to, stretch a dollar. And sometimes you're reading these ceramic professor positions and it's like ceramics and brain surgery and auto mechanic repair.
No, totally, right?
Yeah.
I like to say that unfortunately, New Hampshire is 50th in the country for supporting education in general. And unfortunately, I've been on the kind of beginning end of what's happening, I think, across higher ed and a lot of educational institutions where I started at Plymouth State University in 2008. There were probably 12 faculty members, and we're now down to 5 full-time faculty members. When I say full-time, that's tenure track with scholarship and things like that included. So my colleague in sculpture retired, and they did not refill that position. So I can't let that go because I think 3D, I love ceramics, but ceramics isn't good for everything. So as much as people are like, but no, I can totally make a door latch out of clay. It's like, no, that doesn't work so good.
Doesn't matter if the door hits my toe every time.
Exactly.
It's still clay.
What is that? So now I'm kind of doing both of those, and I've always taught 3D, yeah, that's kind of how that job has changed over time. But I think it's one of the kind of scary things in our culture right now is the loss of all of these higher education institutions. Of course, specifically in ceramics, but in the arts in general, we're just getting the
arts and humanities. Yeah.
The arts and humanities, totally, Kathy, are just getting the shit kicked out of us. There ain't no other way to say it.
Well, and it only keeps going because we keep going. I mean, that's the thing of, we need people who are out there making and doing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I really gotten into as of late, the kind of this, I'll have my New England comes out and goes, I know this is going to sound all hippy dippy, but I do think there's a wicked connection between your brain and your hands. And the farther we're getting away from that, the more scared that I get about culture. And I guess what I mean by that is that we all know when you're in the studio or you're in the flow, right? Where you've lost track of time and day, and there's all this research coming out that's going, holy crap, is that good for your brain and your body? So I try and I talk about that a lot with students, like, hey, you've got this great gift, but know that 90% of people out there aren't going to really understand what you do or how you do it. So everyone's an educator in that case, right, Matt? Where we're all, that's our job, is be like, hey, this stuff's important. I know you may not think so, but it is.
Although speaking of that process, I mean, you've had the luxury recently of the faculty position with a sabbatical. So you've had time in the studio. How are you feeling about your studio these days?
And I guess, I don't know if you've heard the podcast at all, but just tell the listeners what technically you're using, like what kind of clay and what are you fire into? Give us the 411, Nick.
I'm working right now in porcelain. I'd say about 5 years ago, I made the switch into working with porcelain because I had always believed that fallacy of porcelain is, it's the bitch goddess of clay, and it will crack, and it warps, and boo, it's evil, but beautiful all at the same time, right? I was a diehard. I'm a big fan of earthenware. Love that red clay. But I started doing stuff with porcelain and just going, man, this material is doing all the stuff that I want. And in some ways, and when you have a professional life that's not just the studio, and again, the absolute beauty that I have of working and having a sabbatical. Again, huge privilege of having a sabbatical, right? I like talking to my friends in the business world because they're all like, so wait a minute, you are going to get a semester off and the whole summer and you're getting paid for that. And I'm like, yep. And they just get angry about that, but I'm like, I got to tell you, it's been such if you look at my resume right now, there's a, here's the graph. It's like, whoop, it's going straight up. Like I was just at a residency. I had a body of work. I'm so excited to have work in a gallery right now. Having that ability to let my mind flex a little bit has been, and taking away that the regular things, having to get up, bring the kid to school, those things don't change, but having the loss of not working at the university has just been hugely rejuvenating. I'm coming back to my job like, dun, 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 let's go.
Well, you've been out doing adventure and riding the white dragon. Because the thing we also should say about your work is that you're not just working in porcelain, you're working in press molding and assembling and doing all the things that everyone tells you not to do with porcelain.
Right. I mean, I honestly, I think that's something that I had that history always followed me. And I was like, I'm not doing porcelain. I don't have time to screw around with that. When I have time to make work, I don't want to be screwing stuff up. I have done everything I can to make porcelain misbehave, and nothing. I honest to God, like nothing. I've had a couple of like cracks, and I've forced it. I've dried it out too quickly. When I make my connections, I've actually pulled them apart a little bit to see if that'll, encourage cracks, but nothing.
Wow.
So I've had a lot of luck with it, and I don't, I hate glaze. I did. Oh, that was one of the questions. This is one of the questions that I had an immediate response to. What glaze do you hate?
All the glazes.
I hate. I have very specific ones.
Oh, okay.
I hate Celadon and Temmaku.
Ooh.
Why?
Those are
because I've
words.
seen so many people screw up perfectly good pieces by just whacking one of those goddamn, boilerplate glazes that's in the studio. Oh, what a beautiful piece. How do you think you're going to fit? I think I'm just going to show it in the Temmaku and then take it out, and it's brown.
10,000 years of ceramic art history just thrown down the well just now.
Nick tells China to get lost.
Get
Take a
lost.
ride.
Well, but that, I think also what you're talking about is something I always talk about with our students, that a thing will drive me crazy when, you're in a public studio and you just see people standing there with their bisque pot, in their hand, standing in front of the row of glazes, and they're just trying to make these artistic decisions right there. It's like, what's the least painful decision? And it's just like dunk, wipe, call it done, move on. And like, you gotta, I admittedly, like, I'm really into glazes. I'm very pro glaze, but I really think that you should be designing the glaze when you're making the pot. Like those two need to go together and not be an afterthought.
Yes, I totally. I can't remember who I was talking to recently who was basically saying, the ceramics is just going down the tubes. Everyone's buying everything commercially and it's horrible. And why would you do that? No one knows how to make glazes anymore. And I was kind of like, actually, and I brought you guys up, like, Ceramic Materials Workshop, like that's what a great brainchild, and how accessible is that resource, so that now I could say like, geez, you know what? I need a satin blue to finish off, the interiors of these pieces. I could literally do that. Whereas when I was growing up, you had to pull out the potter's handbook and then file through it. And what's the hardness and all of these other, now you can, there's a science to it. So yeah, I would much prefer people do that. Right.
Oh, enough blowing smoke. Tell me more about me.
Well, I was going to say, like, the more education people have about glazes, they make better choices of when they should buy something commercial.
Exactly.
When it's if you're an urban potter and you don't have room for a lot of material, it just might make more sense to get it in a pint. Then it depends on the glaze, of course. But
And I say that, but you're using the porcelain. And again, I love the vitreousness of that material and that, satiny surface. Oh, I love that. And I just put a clear glaze on the interior and that's it. I would say the response I'm getting to the more recent work is just like, hey, why come you have no color on that piece? And it is something I'm thinking about. But when I go to do color, you're damn right. I'm going to go buy some commercial underglazes and screw around with those first to see what I can get from those. And I have been doing that. So, but color's a beast all in of itself.
But you're making a conscientious decision. And I think the same thing about sort of talking about sort of the lazy abuse of glaze at the same time. Like, we've got a bunch of your work around, and like that rawness is part of what you're doing. It is thought out. It is what the object is. It's what the object is meant to be. And that's fine. There are technical limitations. And we always talk about that, like with glazes, if you're talking about food and this and that. But
right.
Well, apparently Nick doesn't have a problem. He can't make the porcelain break.
I can't do it. It's impervious to all of my destructive methods.
Did you say what cone you're firing to? And are you firing an oxidation or reduction?
It's cone 10, and yeah, it's good job bringing me back, Kathy, because that's where I when I'm in, working, when I'm teaching or, dadding or husbanding, whatever the thing is, I like to be able to come up to the studio and kind of work and make, and then have a quicker turnaround. And for me, cone 10 oxidation has just been hitting it just right. I can put it into the kiln, fire it, comes out vitreous, all the things that I need.
Dang.
So yeah,
preach, brother. You don't have to convince us about cone 10. Speaking.
Yeah, I know. There's definitely a camaraderie that I have with you all about the whole cone 6 conundrum. And that's
Kathy gets quiet.
I say it because I know. And yes. Well, wait, but Kathy, you're firing the cone 6, correct?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. And is it but are you using the black lug?
Mm-hmm. The lug one.
So the black lug for the sgraffito. I've messed around with that, and that is something you cannot mess up, is that black on porcelain. But yeah, I don't know, the cone 6, it's my whole, the corporations came in and created cone 6. Okay. Created cone 6. So it's this weird little in-between area. And what happens is and it's accessible. I think that's Kathy's observation is money, right? Because it's accessible. If I am a high school teacher, I don't want to screw around with mixing glazes and doing that. I want them out of the box, out of the bottle, ready to go, so that my kids can have the experience of working with that material, so.
Well, it's not even that. I mean, and we're not anti cone 6. It's that we're anti a lot of the things that cone 6 is sold as, but there are benefits. And one of the benefits is most people can get a fairly affordable cone 6 kiln that they can have installed with domestic electric 200 amp service, and that they don't have to worry about, and will work well for what they're doing. And that's perfectly fine. Our bigger problem is like the people are like, no, nobody does cone 10 anymore because cone 6 has replaced it, and cone 10 is nowhere near as good. Like, no, back up, everybody. Take a chill pill.
As soon as I can afford an S-type thermocouple, I'm totally switching to 10.
Oh, nice.
Saving up.
I find myself still saying, after the pandemic, during the pandemic, the studios I turned totally to just firing in the electric kilns, low fire. And I just found all these great things happening. Like, wow, there's a really fast turnaround on this. Students can really work quickly. There's not, because we've got a big old gas cart kiln, and I haven't fired that in a few years.
Wow.
Because there's a quicker turnaround with the low fire.
What kind of clay are you using for the low fire with the students?
I am using one of the commercial reds, and in the studio I have general education courses for all students, and then specific art student courses. And for the students who are the Gen Ed students, I have boxed clay. So it comes right out of the box. It's, I mean, commercial clay, it comes out of the bag perfect, so there's no screwing around or wedging or things like that. And then we take that recycle, and I use actually a Linda Arbuckle terracotta that I then add to whatever we have for recycle. And that's just been going great and super forgiving, but I needed to replace one of the kilns. So I just fancied up and got one of the scuts with the Wi-Fi, like your kiln is at 2000 degrees,
Use it on your app. Look at the temperature of my kiln.
Exactly. It's like, Nick, would you like me to turn the kiln on?
Nick, you forgot to push the button.
Yes. Well, and again, I feel like I have this history in my brain. I'd never, when you're first starting out somewhere, you never think, oh, I'm going to be one of those people someday. And by those people, I mean the person that's like, I remember when we used to have dials on our kilns and you turn the dial up and that's how you ran a kiln. And you'd have to wake up at midnight.
Later, turn it up.
Yeah.
Turn it up again. But yeah,
that's exhausting.
So we bought a new kiln, and the goal is to kind of start bringing Cone 10 back in to the curriculum and use the smaller kiln. So we've got a good turnover so students can see what they're getting, because we're going to need to recreate our Cone 10 glazes with all of the materials that are kind of going in and out right now. So, and that's great. That'll be a great experience for students that I'm really excited about. And also, I'll be able to sneak some of my work in as we're firing Cone 10.
We got there. We finally got there. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Real agenda.
New Hampshire Education Board, take note.
Scholarship.
So listen, Nick.
Research.
Part of this segment is, what I want to hear about are the juicy stories of like, what's an example of like a studio disaster or challenge that you've had in your long established career?
Well, Nick's already established he's perfect. You can't ruin porcelain.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
I know exactly how to work with porcelain.
Go in the Wayback Machine and figure something out.
Yeah. So it's actually it's a Cone 6 kerfuffle, right?
Oh.
I had a student who this was when I was I'd say in my first couple of years working at PSU, and a student came in, and for the summer she worked at a summer camp, was like, "Hey Nick, I would really like to fire these cups." And I was like, "Sure. Hey, let's bring them in. And do you know what temperature they were?" And there was a pause, just like I just did. And she was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Yes, what?" And what do we fire to here? And we fired to Cone 10. And she's like, "Oh yeah, we were firing to Cone 10. I was like, "Okay, cool. Let's, so go ahead and, you can use some of the glazes and fire them up." And so we started cycling through the gas kiln, and all of a sudden these weird molten chunks started showing up, dripping off the sides of the shelves. And I was like, that's, and I had totally, because, I'm the technician as well as the teacher, as well as all the things. So I'm like, that's interesting. So I took one of this student's pieces and I put it into this little bisque piece to kind of test things out, which I should have done from the beginning with this person's work. And I actually think I have it in the studio now. It's this great. So put that in the kiln, it fires, and it is a perfect melted cup with Chino glaze on it. And it melted in such a way, and it's definitely Cone 6 because it just sat long enough, right? At temperature, and it just laid down over itself. And it's like the Magritte piece, "This is not a pipe." It's like, this is not a cup. And it's this perfect piece. So she comes in and she's like, "Hey, did you fire those pieces?" And I paused, just as she did when I asked her what temperature we were firing that piece to. And I was like, and here's what happened. And she was like, that's awesome. Can I have that? And I was like, no, no, you can't. This is mine. And I still use it to this day. But I mean, it's a perfect outline. You can see the opening, the mouth for the piece. It's perfect. So
I don't know. You should have put a chain on it and hung it around her neck and paraded her across campus in the gong, screaming shame
on a cart. Bring out your pottery that's being fired too hot. Bring out your pottery. Yeah, so that's one of many, but I was thinking about that and also thinking about kind of material failures like that. But there's also just I find that it's more the interpersonal failures that happen that I just never forget. Like everyone's melted pots, everyone's mixed up a 10,000 gram batch of material that was crap.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the things like I was in a publication and I was very excited about that. And I'd missed the deadline that they had given me. And I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. And this was an email. And I was like, I'm sorry, I missed that deadline. And, I can't, could I still submit? And they're like, well, you're late. But okay. And I was like, oh, great. So the piece got into the book, and this was really awesome. And then I met Nsika, and I ran up to this person, and I was like, hey, I really appreciate you giving me a little bit of leeway. And as I'm talking to them, their face is kind of just like they're not making any facial expressions. And I'm kind of like, that's weird. Maybe, I don't know. They're not, what's going on? And came to realize that the person they were talking with had not gotten into the book for that reason. And they were like,
oh, Nick.
I know, Kathy. I know. It's this, there's a meme, where you remember those horrible things and you turn your head to the side like, oh. and that
so
was
painful.
That was one of those things, and as afterwards, and of course, you're at the conference, and I always love thinking about the 6 degrees of separation that does not exist in our community.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 3 degrees of separation. So of course we're at the conference, and I'm like,
Kevin
hey,
Bacon.
I get the same as them. And they're like, oh yeah, I heard you thanked them for that. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And they were like, oh, you'll see. Those are the things you learn as you're growing up and you're having your grown up ins.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see, we just avoid doing that. Then
yeah, so you just avoid people.
Avoid people. Exactly. Again, the pandemic, it has just okayed all of that.
That's why you all live in New Hampshire.
Yeah, exactly.
Live free and leave me alone.
Yeah.
So do you have any, like challenges right now with materials or?
No, he's perfect.
Oh, I know. You
can't
keep
do
saying that.
anything
You keep
wrong.
saying that, but I know Nick, so I'm really not going with that storyline. So.
So do I. I need to text his child and tell him this.
I think one of the things I'm looking forward to and not looking forward to is kind of recalculating a lot of glazes because of, flipping through the book. Boy, that Custer Feldspar, that stuff's in everything.
Cruel mistress. Yeah, it's been rough.
And saying that, I was going through Maine, and I stopped in the Portland pottery supply and was at the shop there, and I walked into their kind of loading dock area, and I was like, hi, I'd like to order 200 pounds of Custer Feldspar. And the 2 people behind the counter were like,
you don't know.
They're kind of looking at each other and like, did you know? And I was like, no what? And they were like, well, and I was like, is there no more Custer Feldspar? And they were like, yes. And I was like, oh, no. So I would say that's going to be, definitely an area where, and I've heard you all talk about that. I'm sure, Kathy, you're recalculating away in your studios for that. But I mean,
so much work.
I can't imagine. I mean, that's huge, to the point where I'm just going, we're tossing out all the old glazes because we actually haven't used them. And of course, I want to get rid of the Temuku and the Celadon.
That's first. Yeah.
Well, when you don't touch this stuff to begin with, you don't have a problem. I mean,
exactly, right?
Yeah.
The best way to not be addicted to drugs is don't use drugs.
Don't do drugs. But Custer, Albany, like they're all, we are such a small cross section of all these industries that mines are gonna dry up. Materials change. That's nothing different. The only thing you can accept in life is that there's going to be plenty of change. But I'm also, I've got some work that I'm, I had kind of grown up hearing the whole, like, don't sign on with galleries. It's bad news. They're taking 50% of your profits. Well, I'm in a gallery and I'm pretty excited to have work somewhere else than sitting on my shelves staring at me, and so that's pretty exciting. But, there is the whole, like, shipping and all of those things that have been kind of a challenge. I haven't had to send out something really big. That's one of the great things about working in clay, right? Everything is, for the most part, smaller.
For you.
If you build it
for me,
smaller,
right.
I mean, speak for yourself.
Well, that was, I think it was when we were at that residency, Kathy, where we were talking about work, and I think it was you who was saying, it's like, yeah, I know, it's great. People love my work. And I'm always like, yeah, isn't that great? Would you like it? Because I've got it right here. Like, it in storage in a goddamn box in my basement.
Yep, exactly.
Everyone's like, oh, that's so cutting edge. What a fantastic piece. How is it living in your basement?
Yeah. That was like in reference to doing installation work.
Yes.
And
right.
or having people like want a part of it. Like, okay, well, I'd love the pots out of the sculptural installation. It's like, asking a painter, can I have like the lower left-hand corner, maybe like a 4-inch by 4-inch swath?
Right.
Every time we move, my mother suddenly finds more work to give back to us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I will say, jumping back to the Feldspar, that it's the good news is if you're not running like a clay production or a glaze production house, that one's going to be fairly simple as far as replacements. Most of the replacements will work.
Just throw it out.
Well, yeah,
get a new one.
I've had plenty of people tell me since then that they're like, well, I want to use up everything that I've got, and I'm just like, or just don't. Just deal with it right now, because it's that's a future you problem. Let's do
right.
With the Custer, I will say, if you are going into testing, the big trick is silica. Custer has a lot more silica in it than the other replacement Feldspars, so you probably need to test you can almost do a 1-to-1 replacement with the G200 EU or the Mahavir or this new Vardam one or the other ones that are coming, but you're probably going to need to cut back the silica levels. So that's the testing procedure I'd send you off on. Try it, but try taking the silica up and down, and you'll probably find a pretty close approximation to it.
Or you could take my advice and just throw it out. I mean,
burn it all down.
Too.
That's Rose's advice.
Just like walk away,
Well,
get a new one.
I don't know because I was getting Mahavir getting it for a while, and it was coming in these bags that were like, they weren't a bag.
Yeah.
It was like
they're woven.
Yeah, they're like these woven bags.
Like, leave stuff everywhere.
It was like a Trader Joe's shopping bag.
Yes. Like a woven Trader Joe's shopping bag.
I am told by my ears to the ground that they are replacing that with a traditional. I don't know whether it's going to be paper or the sort of paper plastic combos that a lot of things come in. I am told that Mahavir in the future will not be in those woven bags.
That's good.
Yeah, because it kicks up so much. Like, I can't last time I went to buy Mahavir, and you put it in the back of the car, and just oof,
Yeah.
just
Like,
everywhere.
oh, crap.
Yeah, you
Don't roll
look
the
like
windows
a coke
down.
smuggler. Wearing a respirator, driving down the highway, all the windows open.
Yeah.
It's only an hour away. I can do it.
You can just see the cops driving by, and it's like, hello, base. We've got
a Breaking Bad moment.
Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad happening on I-95 North. Yeah.
This has been so good talking to you, Nick. This has been such a delight.
It's been great talking to you all.
Oh, thanks for coming out and sharing your perfection with us.
All of the great things that I do that never fall apart, ever, ever, ever.
Next time we come over, I'm going to examine for cracks. We'll expose you. We'll put it on social media.
Well, we hope we can come back soon, Nick.
You bet. I'd always love to come back, and it was great talking to y'all.
Thanks for being our guinea pig.
You got it.
Well, folks, that's it for this week's episode of For Flux Sake. I'd like to thank the listeners who submitted questions this week, and if you want your question answered on the show, shoot us an email at ForFluxSakePodcast@gmail.com. So join us next time, and when in your studio, remember what Rose always says.
Always remember to test, test, test. This is a test of the emergency glaze system.